G'day, so today's film was recommended to me by my high school literature teacher, no less, because he said he enjoyed this film growing up for being, quote, borderline pornography. That is a remarkable thing to recommend.
Ho 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 ho, delightfully devilish, Seymour.
Yes, everybody, welcome back to Delightfully Devilish, the show where we discuss films that all at once meet the criteria of being the good, the bad, and the ugly. I'm your host, Jukebox Harry, and today we're going to be looking at the underbelly of 80s films which had a cross between male fantasies and fantasy movies. Deathstalker is a 1983 sword and sorcery film directed by James Spartatelli, although he credits himself as Sherlock Holmes' character John Watson as the director. Yeah, don't get misled, this is not something that would be created by anyone on that kind of intellectual level. It also stars nobody that you've ever heard of. Yeah, one of the actors played Jason in Friday the 13th Part 3, and one of the actresses was infamously murdered by Phil Spector. But that is the biggest claim to fame for this movie. It was one of many films to be produced by low-budget B-movie filmmaker Roger Corman in Argentina, and it was released at a time where sword and sorcery films were in their heyday thanks to the release of Conan the Barbarian. As a result, it ended up being a huge success at box office, which spawned 3 sequels. And this is my first time watching this movie in about 10 years. I really enjoyed watching Deathstalker as a teenager because it delivered on exactly what I wanted from a good bad sword and sorcery movie, in the sense that there was plenty of action and plenty of nudity. Now, I have become a lot more woke since then and a lot more politically active, but that horny teenage boy inside of me is still there, so let's go back. That theme song sounds pretty cool at first, but you're going to learn quick smart that this film repeats its music like a broken record. It's going to grow old real quick. There's no context as to what's going on in the intro scene to Deathstalker. A bunch of people are just running or stumbling around.
Running, running, and 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 running, running.
Eventually, this leads them to a blonde man who slaughters them all in a typical B-movie sword fight.
Take it all. It's yours. Take it.
I intend to.
Yeah, white people have a tendency to do that.
Well, that wasn't very good.
This just isn't your day, is it?
And this isn't your best choice of career path, mate. Blondie unties the girl and then just pulls her top off and immediately starts going at it with her. She looks like she's into it, but I also feel like after he's just killed everyone around her, she can't say no because of the implication.
If the girl said no, then the answer obviously is no.
No.
But the thing is she's not gonna say no. She would never say no because of the implication.
What implication?
The implication that things might go wrong for her if she refuses to sleep with me.
What do you want?
Oh, he just likes to watch you guys.
Outside.
You are outside, dickhead! And the girl runs off, so that kind of reinforces my idea that she didn't want to be a part of that. I'm not sure if I like where our hero is going. Then we go to what looks like half a set. Like they started building something, ran out of money halfway through and went, oh, you know what, that's acceptable.
Get any poorer, you're gonna have to eat that dog.
Oh, I thought this movie was shot in Argentina, not China.
Real kings live in castles.
Yes, but this was the biggest castle he could afford with Roger Corman's funding.
A brave man could get inside one car's castle and kill him.
You need a fool.
No, a hero.
Heroes and fools are the same thing.
The music apparently wanted this to be such a dramatic moment, but the actor, he just didn't agree.
I'll offer you anything you like.
I don't know that you can offer him anything. Can you offer him the chance to snort a line of crushed cinnamon toast crunch off Gary Busey's boner in Johnny Depp's Hollywood mansion?
I don't know, but it's a bloody good question.
Off in a very artificial castle set, we meet a collection of scantily clad women, including 2 in a medieval hot tub. And a lot of boobs are on display. You're gonna learn real fast, Deathstalker is a shameless heterosexual male fantasy. It's mostly naked women and fight scenes. But I am not gonna pretend like those aren't 2 things that I enjoy.
I want the sword.
And what sword is that? We haven't had any context so far.
I am Kang, general of the great Lord Monko.
Kang? I voted for Kodos. We also have this woman whose dialogue mostly happens when you can't see her mouth on screen, so obviously a heavy amount of dubbing happened in post.
A taste of my magic, Kang.
Blondie rides in to give us a low-budget decapitation. Kang turns into a snake and then into a bird before flying off with an amulet.
What was that amulet?
It is one of the 3 powers of creation. Munkar controls 2 powers. He came here as Kang to get the sword. With your strength and courage, Deathstalker, you can use the power in the sword to get the amulet.
Oh, his name is actually Deathstalker. Jesus Christ, so his parents would have just like flipped through a medieval book of children's names and went, Deathstalker. Yeah, our baby looks like a Deathstalker.
Munkar already holds the first two powers, the Amulet of Life and the Chalice of Magic.
You are very close now to the power, Deathstalker.
So was Shao Kahn over here just watching himself in a chalice full of wine? What a strange hobby.
The power will come to he who becomes a child.
To he who becomes a child. You know, no matter how hard I try to deconstruct that or analyze it, it makes no sense. It just makes me think that the villain of the story is going to end up being Kevin Spacey, and the hero has to trick him by pretending to be a child.
Reunite the three powers.
And after they're together?
You can do anything. You will be the power.
You're talking like a song from The Lion King. Stop that. It makes no sense.
Deathstalker, your thirst should be only for the first power.
Actually, I don't think that staying hydrated on a quest is a very big ask.
Sauron waits there, the keeper of the Sword of Justice.
In a very generic grassy hut that just so happens to be right there. Deathstalker crawls inside to find a pretty unconvincing knockoff of the Gamorrean guards from Return of the Jedi.
I live in this damp cave, trapped, eating mice, moss, bugs, and you come here looking for gifts?
More white imperialism for you. This film doesn't even try to be a negative reflection of white culture, but it keeps on emphasizing it. We get a brief scuffle, which is poorly lit and monochromatic in color, so it's not easy to understand or pretty to look at. And Deathstalker finally gets his hands on the sword.
The third power.
Sincerity's overwhelming.
I think I'm gonna weep.
You know what? Enough.
And the insane power of your sword scares off his enemy, who according to Wikipedia is an ogre.
See you later, you big motherfucker!
I was once a man like you.
Were you? With the power of the sword, Deathstalker actually turned back into a child. Why is this actually a part of the story? And more importantly, why would you bring a child to the set of this movie? There is more nudity in this movie than in the entire trilogy of 50 Shades of Grey movies. Then the Gamorrean falls into the water, Deathstalker turns back into an adult, and the Gamorrean turns into a human.
What the fuck?
And that is the end of this plot point. All that talk of Deathstalker needing to become a child so that he could actually lead the quest. And he's done with it now. The film never comes back to it. And there's no explanation as to why that was necessary. Oh my god, this is gonna break me.
Are in the eye of the beholder.
Everyone everywhere is the eye of the beholder. That is a generalization for everyone in society, for fuck's sakes.
Get down, somebody's coming!
I hope it isn't you, because that girl is definitely not into it. Another fight with a group of random characters breaks out, and one of them takes it as the perfect time to go and try to rape the girl. Deathstalker rocks up to join the fight, and even though the choreography isn't especially tight and the cinematography is very B-movie typical, the fight scenes are mildly entertaining. Occasionally there are even some especially ridiculous moments, such as this death scene where the sword very obviously does not touch the guy, and then someone standing off screen casually squirts a bunch of fake blood onto the sword. There are no convincing deaths in this movie, but it's pretty entertaining to watch the film try and get away with it. Luke Skystalker decides to join the adventure, as does a female sword fighter who is so scantily clad that they don't even try to give her sexy armor. The two of them talk of being invited to fight in a tournament hosted by Shao Kahn. Now, I was just making a crack when I called him Shao Kahn earlier because he kind of looks like that actor from Mortal Kombat Annihilation, but that is actually the plot of this movie. This guy is inviting them into a tournament, which is basically sword and sorcery Mortal Kombat. Deathstalker bangs the new girl, and the film even gives us some niplicks. Yes, I will agree, borderline pornography is a perfect description of this movie. To reinforce that, the entire next scene is composed of a bunch of different men grabbing at women, more sex, and a mudbath catfight between two actresses who were actually sisters in real life. At least 50% of this movie is just one massive orgy. That is a cold hard fact. The entire party scene goes on for a ridiculously long time, but all the manic energy of the dancing and women on display definitely had me pretty distracted.
We shall see in the battles of the next 2 days who will claim my kingdom.
And there's even a pig-faced gimp. That way this film can have some kind of fantasy beast but also still be sexually charged. And out of the blue, everyone just starts randomly fighting or trying to pull women's clothes off while the camera keeps focusing on the women's chests or butts. And Deathstalker watches the entire time with complete boredom until he finally decides to go and claim this woman for himself so that he can bang her too. Deathstalker is just such a slut.
I'll have her sent to your chamber when the excitement is over.
I don't feel like any excitement has actually started with this movie. The orgy fight starts again, adding a guy swinging on the chandelier, Pig Gimp tearing someone's arm off and beating another person with it, and then a pillow fight. And this scene is actually 10 minutes long, with nothing essential being added to the story in it, just a whole lot of B-movie violence and nudity. It is awful, but I love just how shameless it is. Even the next scene has a lot of women's butts in it.
Hey, I'm Cosmo Kramer, the S-Man.
Shao Kahn reveals his plan to let all the best warriors kill each other before executing the tournament victor, though he orders Deathstalker to be killed.
Someone he won't suspect must kill him.
He won't suspect me.
He won't suspect Princess Cordelia.
But she'll never... Wait. I know what you're thinking. Don't... No.
What are you doing? I can't feel my shirt! In a very awkwardly filmed scene, this male character actually goes through a transition into becoming female. And of course the film is careful to give us plenty of explicit close-ups. I love that one of the villain's powers is actually giving people the right to have that transition. Like, that is not the power of a villain. That is something that could sincerely help so many people in the real world. The newly female character goes to try and kill Deathstalker but fails, so he pins her down and tries to rape her. This guy is meant to be our hero. I really don't know what social norms were meant to be back in 1983 Argentina if this was considered acceptable. She leaves the room and resumes her male form before having a sword fight with Tits McGee. She kills him, but somehow in a sword fight where she didn't even get stabbed once, she walks off and then dies in Deathstalker's arms. I could talk about how she died from having no injuries, I could talk about how this doesn't add any dramatic power, I could talk about how the actor couldn't even be bothered saying anything after she died. But no, because you should be expecting this kind of storytelling from the film at this point.
Let the tournament begin.
Once the Mortal Kombat actually kicks off, Deathstalker devolves into a series of generic and unconvincing back-to-back fight scenes, most of which are so poorly done that they're pretty laughable. Just watch all these characters not actually getting hit and then having delayed reactions. And the fact that we've gone from empty scenes of nudity to empty scenes of cheap combat says everything about the storytelling shortcomings in Deathstalker. Things turn homoerotic between Deathstalker and Luke Skywalker, but I'm not exactly sure why. It escalates to a full-on punch-up and ends with Deathstalker actually killing Luke. I thought both these characters were meant to be heroes in the story, but then Deathstalker killed him. And considering that he also tried to rape that girl earlier, he's not a hero. Deathstalker fights the pig gimp in the tournament the next day, and I think this was meant to be the scene that was promoted on the film's poster. Now, nothing in this film closely resembles this monster, but Pig Gimp probably comes the closest. But even though he's presented as a large monster on the poster, he's actually a little bit shorter than our hero.
So that was a fucking lie.
It's mostly just a lot of back and forth until the gimp runs right into Deathstalker's sword and does a front flip before we get some of that amazing squirting blood effect. Then the castle women start fighting off the guards, and Deathstalker finds out that he can use the Force.
I've been waiting for you.
And I've been waiting for an actual story to kick in. I've been waiting for 68 minutes. But we only have 8 minutes of this movie left, and I don't anticipate any miracles. Suddenly we're outside, and Shao Kahn uses double team, but Deathstalker slays them all, and then he just walks out anyway, so that was pointless. He enchants Deathstalker's sword.
The power is still mine.
I don't want your power. I want this world rid of you.
It's really hard to determine what has less conviction in this film, the writing for the character Deathstalker, or Rick Hill's performance as the character. The villain summons fire, which doesn't even do anything, and rather than giving us a badass finale, Deathstalker takes the villain's chalice, then holds it up to the lightning to destroy it with a sword and amulet, thus eliminating the 3 objects of power from the world while the others all tear Shao Kahn apart with their bare hands. And that's the end of the film 74 minutes in. Is Deathstalker a bad film?
Yes.
It's difficult to conjugate many things to actually say about Deathstalker because this film is so bereft of actual storytelling that it does not stimulate any kind of intellectual thought. There is never really a plot in this film, but a lot of things are constantly happening. Most of Deathstalker is fast-paced, jumping between female nudity and B-movie action scenes which themselves are mildly entertaining. But the rest of it barely even pretends to have a narrative. One film that's worth comparing to Deathstalker is You're the Hunter from the Future, an Italian, Argentinian, American co-production which was also an 80s sword and sorcery film that came out around the time of Conan the Barbarian's success. Now, that movie was 100 minutes long, and it was mostly characters just running around across the landscape, so it was actually a lot more slow and a lot less entertaining than Deathstalker. Deathstalker is only 74 minutes long. It is short and sweet, and focuses just on trying to exploit the action and nudity that prepubescent boys of the 1980s would be begging for without even trying to have a story. You're the Hunter from the Future had a lot less action and nudity, and it was far less entertaining. But there were some moments where it felt like You're actually tried. It attempted to have a plot, crossed into science fiction territory, and even had a cool theme song. Both films are largely the same, except that one pretended to be something more and one didn't. And the fact that Deathstalker comes out on top goes to show that with sword and sorcery films, you just really shouldn't try that hard, because the foundation of your material is rarely going to rise above its gimmicks. Although, all that being said, I feel like Deathstalker probably should have tried, like, just a little bit harder. I mean, there is not even any attempts at character or story in the film. One thing I really don't like about Deathstalker is the main character. He's such an underwhelming hero who you'll probably forget is even there half the time. I'll admit that actor Rick Hill is mildly capable with the sword, but he has no fraction of enthusiasm for the part, and neither does the film around him. He's so empty and forgettable that his only memorable aspects are that he kills one of the heroes and tries to rape someone. I should not dislike the hero, but I do, because he is a shit cunt, and it is no surprise that the actor did not return to the role until Deathstalker 4, because he is that easily replaceable. It's also kind of funny that actor Rick Hill is one of the few stars from this film to not actually have his own Wikipedia page. He has had that little impact on the cinematic world. Deathstalker is simply an expendable movie. It doesn't want to tell a story, it wants to be a good time, and when the characters are fighting and not talking, it certainly has its campy charm. I enjoyed watching it. It was short and sweet and delivered all the demands of a decent 80s B-movie. So it's certainly one of the more entertaining sword and sorcery films that I've watched, and that's coming from someone who did not like The Sword and the Sorcerer, and didn't even like Conan the Barbarian. I was not a fan of that movie. Deathstalker gets 4 very forgettable heroes out of 10. It has none of the essential elements of good storytelling. No script, no care about acting, no concern for character development. But that's not what you're here for. If you want B-movie sword fights and plenty of boobs, then this film will deliver. And that does it for today's episode of Delightfully Devilish, you guys. If there are any movies you want to see me discuss on this show, please leave them in the comment section below. If you want to see more episodes of this show, please hit that subscribe button. Otherwise, until next time, I've been your host, Jukebox Harry. Peace!